I'm the first sitting judge to ever blow the whistle on her active colleagues. What I did was I exposed with all those exhibits that I gathered over months of them not removing firearms from law enforcement officers that had been convicted of shooting their wives with those firearms. Okay. Or they had beaten their wives and then they're supposed to be not having any weapons while they're on probation. But the DA's office at the time was wink, wink, like, oh, well, we won't request that so you can keep your job, wink, wink. And Judge Salcido, you'll go along with that, right? And I was like, no, no. And they kept telling me, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I kept saying no. And they literally told me, my supervisors told me I was committing career suicide and what was wrong with me.
I want to bring in a very special guest. This person is one of the youngest judges that was put on the bench at her time coming into office, which is amazing. And that time that she came in, always wanted to be a judge at the time frame since being a little girl, and now is a retired circuit court judge and also a lawyer that advocates on behalf of the people. Judge, are we here? Are you in the house? Welcome.
I'm here. I'm in the house, and I've been called a lot worse things than DeAnna. That's for
sure. Okay, let's make sure we say the name correctly. Say it for us, because sometimes my country tongue gets me a little off. So tell us the exact name so we know how to say it, pronounce it correctly.
Got it. All right. So it's DeAnna. Salcido.
So now you're a judge. Now you get the word. Everything happens. How is the transition from going from being an attorney to now setting up to be a judge? And when I say transition, how are people looking at you now? Tell us about all of those things that you experience in that transition period and then sitting on the bench.
Well, okay, so there's like two parts of this. One part is when people know that you're the judge, all of a sudden your jokes are funnier.
I don't want to laugh hard right now, but that is funny though. But yeah,
people know you're a judge. It's like all of a sudden you're invited to all the parties, and your jokes are funnier, and you're suddenly honorable, right? And it's funny, but then it's sad at the same time, right? So I was a young judge. I was 37, as you already mentioned, when I got appointed, and I don't look like your traditional judge, either in real life or on TV. So when I did get transferred and I was actually starting to walk around the courthouse and trying to find my bearings and stuff, I would ask people, hey, excuse me, where's like the judge's elevator, or where's this or that? And they didn't know that I was the judge because I was new, right? And it would be interesting the way they would treat you when they thought you were just Susie Q off the street versus Judge Salcido.
Right.
I even had experiences with law enforcement officers who were rude to me, blocking my car on the street outside on a lunch break while I was a judge. So how it was transitioning is I very quickly learned, like, this is a sick world where they treat people according to their status. And I knew that, but to have it so literally black and white in my face,
right,
was a shock to my system. Yes, it is hard because of the way society fawns over judges. Okay, so and society needs to decide for itself. Do you want judges who are real people, or do you want to put them on this elevated statue, like a marble statue? Because you kind of can't have it both ways. And society needs to have a discussion about how real do we want our judges to be? Do we want them to be like godlike, where they've never made a mistake, where they've never smoked marijuana? Do we want that? Because then a judge can't tell if somebody's lying when they say, like, no, I never got high, even though they're in a car hot boxing, right?
Right.
Like how pure does society want its judges to be? So that's a discussion. But yeah, because like, how would a judge who's never hotboxed before even know that that's not possible to sit in that car with that level of weed and not get like a little bit intoxicated? Okay, so
right.
So I was a trial court judge at the superior court level, and my assignments were the least glamorous assignments, and I loved them. Again, I've always liked that nitty gritty part, but I was in family court and I was in criminal court. And when I was in criminal court, I mostly did misdemeanors, which again, I preferred over felonies, but I'm just the upside down girl or something. I don't know. I just I like those human elements. So to answer your question, we did not have, every judge does not have a research attorney or anything like that. The court has research attorneys. And if you had the luxury of time on your side, you could send something to that research attorney and say, let me know what you think about this. This is coming up in 6 weeks. But the types of courtrooms I was in every day, it was like volume, 100 cases a day, just get it done and rule. And so if I had the chance, I would look ahead and see what things were coming up. And if I didn't know what the law was, I had to look it up. I had to do it myself. So that's why family court judges are the first ones in and usually the last ones out in their respective courthouses, because that work is demanding. It is grueling. Every judge started out as an attorney, right? And
Correct.
so we all had to analyze cases and we all had to argue facts and the cases together to a judge, right?
Right.
So,
what makes you more right now as a judge?
Well, that's the scary part. It doesn't. Okay, that's the truth. There are some people on the bench that belong on the bench, and there's some people on the bench that do not belong on the bench, but they were appointed by political favors or they were elected by popularity. And once they're there, they are there. So it's not true that all judges are the same. So they're just as different as every person that you come across in your daily life. So that's the scary part. And I think I might have told you this before, but when I was a lawyer, lawyers gripe about judges. Oh my God, that judge is so stupid. I can't believe
right.
this argument, and they couldn't understand what I was saying, and we would say that. And unfortunately, once I became a judge, my saying used to change. Instead of judges, I think this judge is stupid, to becoming like, okay, that judge is stupid. Like, I mean, and it's all about your background, your perception, your realities, how they shape the way you receive facts. All right. So I'm thinking of a judge right now who, when I was a DA, she was a commissioner, and she didn't understand that having the young lady testify in juvenile court that she didn't know this car was stolen made absolutely no sense, because there was a screwdriver in the ignition shift. But not only was there a screwdriver in the ignition shift, this wasn't her first offense. So it might have been different if it was her first offense to go, I don't know, he told me to take this car over there and he said it wasn't working, so he put the screwdriver in. But now that you've already been, found guilty of this one, to be caught with another screwdriver in that ignition, it should not fly. So that willingness to bend what's reasonable, this is an abuse of discretion issue, for example here. Was it reasonable for the judge to believe her when she said she had no reason to believe that car was stolen that she was driving? Maybe the first time, but not the second time.
Right.
So, it's the same set of facts that you were just convicted of last year, young lady. So maybe, so anyway, so you were asking me like, what makes it different, right? And I'm here to tell you that's the scary part is there are some people who are lawyers right now who I still wonder how they pass the bar exam. And then they could have a best friend who becomes a judge or is connected to, the governor or connected. So like to become anywhere, what I did, I didn't have all these references. I had to be, but I didn't let that stop me. I said, I just have to be 3 phone calls away from the person I want to get to.
Nice.
If I know this person who knows that person, and then that person is the person I want to talk to, and they have the number, I'm going to start here, get there. So I just had to be 3 phone calls away. The power, what comes to mind for me, the context is me. I was accused at various times of abusing my power. And so when a judge's conduct is being questioned, they have to make sure they have not abused their power. So for me, it came into play when someone said, oh, she let a camera into her courtroom and abused her authority, right? Power. So it wasn't to do with a case so much. It was whether or not the power that I had to let a camera in or not in, whether I was abusing that power, right? So abuse of power is different from abuse of discretion, because judges, as part of their job duties, are supposed to make decisions, and you have to have discretion to make decisions. But your job as a judge comes with power. So if I use my judge letterhead then to write to my potential lender, hey, I'd really like this loan to go through by the end of the month, Judge Salcido, that's abusing my authority. That's abusing my power. That's using the power of the office for my personal benefit.
Hmm.
At times I look back on that and go, geez, if I would have handled this differently, I might have had a different result. I might still be a judge right now. But then I think to myself, but I don't want to be a judge right now. And I don't say that because people shouldn't want to be a judge. It just wasn't for me. For me, being a judge meant I had to stifle myself. I had to suppress. I had to suppress my natural affinity for people and questions. And I had to just go with the flow. I was repeatedly, from my first year on the bench, told, DeAnna, don't ask questions, just do it. This is the way we've always done it. And
Wow.
that is not the way my brain, and that's not the way I operate. I don't operate with, we do it because that's the way it was done. I always try to look for what's the best way to do something.
Right.
And so that's not a welcome discussion in courthouses. Yes, being a judge is very lonely because you spend your lunch hours either with other judges or in your chambers trying to get ready for the afternoon cases, right? And you're not really supposed to talk about things and have opinions because anything that you say basically can then come back and be the next issue in your case. So if I'm at lunch and we're talking about, hey, what do you think? And this happened. What do you think? I remember having a conversation with a fellow judge, and gay marriages at the time were not the norm that they are now. And he was a bigot. He was a bigot. So he had a problem with gay marriages coming to fruition. And he was my supervising judge. And judges oftentimes marry people on the weekends or evenings. And he made a point at lunch, saying, like, I don't care what the law is, I'm never going to do that.
Wow.
And he hears my supervising judge telling me this, and there's another judge there, and he and I just looked at each other. And for me, I've always regretted that I didn't say anything at the time. But I remember I was a young judge. I was maybe 12 or 18 months on the bench.
Right.
And everybody else that I was talking to at that lunch meeting were judges for 15 years, 18 years. And I did not feel that it's not true that all judges are equal behind the row.
Right.
I'm sorry, but that bigotry just kind of made me see red internally. So you were asking
fine. No, you're fine. I appreciate it. Yeah, definitely.
So you were asking me what was it that
So how did you, who did you talk to? These accusations start coming your way. Who do you communicate with? Who do you brainstorm with? How do you plan what to do?
I first reached out to some fellow Latina judges. But what I didn't know at the time is those Latina judges were compromised, if you will. So like the whole knife in the back routine. So when I was complaining that the staff at the courthouse was refusing to make copies for me so that I could review pleadings ahead of time to get ahead of my work, and they were just blanketly saying, no, judge, we're going to be busy. And basically, no matter when you ask us, we plan to be busy for you. So I was receiving, yes. So I first complained to my supervising judge, but this is a different one than the bigoted one. But this one was the political animal one. So he was like, he didn't back me. So I was like, what are you talking about? Why are we letting the tail wag the dog here? I'm the judge. I need copies. How is it that they know from here until perpetuity they're going to be busy whenever I ask for a copy to be made? And he was just like, DeAnna, just stop being so difficult and get your own copies. And so I called up another Latina judge and I said, this is what he told me. Can you believe it? And to my great surprise, because she had already had complaints about her demeanor and her being too rough with attorneys, and then a Latina judge. Keep that in mind because it's a different standard. I've seen white male judges yell vociferously at people and nobody complains. But if a Latina raises her voice, if we put our eyebrow up too high, oh my God, she's so rough on us. So this other Latina judge, I thought she would empathize with me because she had gone through similar complaints about her demeanor. Instead, she wanted to keep her job, whereas I was sort of lackadaisical, I guess, about it. So because she wanted to keep her job, she told me, you know what, DeAnna, if he's telling you to make your own copies, then make your own copies. So that's the Judas knife in the back moment when you realize that your allies that are supposed to be your allies are now just in it to save their job. So in California, the Commission on Judicial Performance is sort of like the Judicial Oversight Board. So they make sure to monitor judges' behavior for that abuse of power, that abuse of authority that we just talked about. They're making sure judges are not using judicial letterhead for personal gain, things like that. So I had organized a group of women boxers. We would box at lunch, box for exercise.
Right.
And one of those, and then there was like a Spanish interpreter. And she just thought I was hilarious. So she's like, you really should be on TV and this and that. And I said, I would like that because my dream is to have a foundation where I can give people free advice, kind of like ACLU for family court. I've always wanted to do something like that. Anyway, to fast forward, her son-in-law worked in the industry and she's like, I'm going to tell him about you. So fast forward, he sees me, he talks to me, and he's like, I would love to come and record in your courtroom. Is that possible? So I said, sure, it's possible. I'm the one who approves it. So, right? It was never going to air on television. It was just so they could get film of me. So I went and checked with the attorneys assigned to my courtroom, and I said, this is what's happening. Is it okay with you? Yes, Judge, that sounds great. We love it. And I said, okay, it's never going to air. It's just for them to give like TV again.
Right.
And so then they asked me, well, what's the best day to do this? And I said, well, Fridays is the best day because they wanted to know when do you send most people to jail? Well, Fridays is the day I would send most people to jail because Fridays was when I ran my domestic violence review hearing. And so we had a system in place where if people messed up, they knew they could come in on a Friday and I would put them in jail, but they would be ordered to be released by Sunday night so they could be back at work on Monday. So they would basically, people would come and turn themselves into me on a Friday afternoon, knowing that if I'm straight with Salcido, she'll be straight with me. So I used to tell them, you come turn yourself in before we have to bring you in chains and I'll work with you. But if we have to go looking for you, that ain't happening. So Fridays was the day people would turn themselves into me, knowing that, okay, I could do my time without losing my job. So I told them that. So they came on a Friday and once that happened, talk about colleagues getting jealous. Oh my God. All of a sudden I went from leading committees and being a rising star who, was being talked about like she should be on the appellate court and she picked this up really fast to like, oh, we don't want her around.
What?
Yeah. So, but by then I had already started noticing that they weren't following the law on the domestic violence cases. And I was dismayed at their regular failure to knowingly follow the mandatory firearm restrictions for people with training orders. But they only did it for people that were either connected politically or otherwise, like rich people who had the private defense attorneys or people who were law enforcement or probation officers. So I started noticing that pattern and I started gathering the evidence because I was planning to become a whistleblower.
Wait a minute. Okay, so let's pause. So let's go back. Now, a whistleblower. Okay, let's explain that. What is a whistleblower and how do you become a whistleblower in the legal realm?
I'm the first sitting judge to ever blow the whistle on her active colleagues. What I did was I exposed with all those exhibits that I gathered over months of them not removing firearms from law enforcement officers that had been convicted of shooting their wives with those firearms. Okay. Or they had beaten their wives and then they're supposed to be not having any weapons while they're on probation.
Former Judge DeAnna Salcido, now a whistleblower. She says family court is a circus, and so is the training in judges' school, especially for child abuse cases.
What I was trained on was to be suspicious of women who brought claims of abuse during a divorce matter. But the DA's office at the time was wink, wink, like, oh, well, we won't request that so you can keep your job, wink, wink. And Judge Salcido, you'll go along with that, right? And I was like, no. So the law says anybody on probation for this or anybody with this pending charge is not allowed access to firearms. So I wouldn't go along with the wink, wink. Come on, Judge. Come on. We're all okay with this. Can't you just sign it on the bottom line? And I was like, no, my name is on this order. And if anything happens to this family, these children, because they get into the fight, and this gun is still in his possession, I'm going to be the judge that let that happen. So I wouldn't go along with it, even when the DA and the defense attorneys had basically conspired to circumvent the law. So
Wow.
that's where I said, that's where I started not wanting this job anymore, because I was getting called up to that supervisor's office.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, DeAnna, other judges are having to carry your workload because they won't let you hear these types of cases anymore. You need to stop doing this. And I'm like, but the law says,
Wow.
and he's like, I know the law says you're correct, but if you want to stay a judge, you will do what the attorneys want.
Well, I have to admit, I can think of one case in my first year that I made a mistake on, and that mistake continues to haunt me.
That case? Joyce Murphy's custody dispute. Murphy told Judge Salcido that her husband was sexually abusing their daughter. Salcido didn't buy it. She gave custody to the father, Henry Bud Parson.
I was following that be suspicious of the timing of abuse claims mantra that I was trained on.
Years later, Parson was convicted of molesting 2 preteen girls, his daughter's friends.
It hurts my heart right now talking about it. It's the thought of one child having to suffer another day, let alone for more years, and then another child was molested. But at the time I made that decision, I could not have been a judicial officer more than 6 to 9 months. And I had the benefit of less than 40 hours of family law training, none of which included how to investigate child sexual abuse claims.
But
Okay, wait.
So every county has a presiding judge. And so like for San Diego, we have 4 main courthouses. Okay, so the presiding judge is, and the total would be maybe 250 judges, okay? So the presiding judge is the one who assigns, you're at this courthouse, you're at this courthouse, you're in family court, you're in criminal court. And then they name an executive committee and this and that. That's the presiding judge. And then they have an assistant presiding judge below that person who's like in training. They've got training wheels so that when the next person comes on, so it's like, a 2-year term, right?
Mm-hmm.
So presiding judge and assistant presiding judge. And then each courthouse has a supervising judge. And so that's the one that each judge at their location, their assigned courthouse, if there's a problem or an issue, they're supposed to go to their supervising judge. And if the judge is not behaving right, that supervising judge is supposed to go and let that judge know, hey, this is what I'm hearing. This is what you need to do to correct the situation, which in theory sounds fine and perfectly appropriate, except for in my situation, my supervising judge literally told me, yes, DeAnna, you are correct on the law, but I don't want you to follow it. You're making it hard for the attorneys. In theory, if I'm having a recurring problem with the supervising judge, I should be able to go to the assistant presiding judge and or the presiding judge and ask for a meeting with them to outline my grievance, in theory. However, by this time, I'm like now 7 or 8 years into this job, and I know that the politics are taking priority over public safety.
Right.
So the reason my supervising judge is coming on me is because I'm insisting on listing children on protective orders as the law required, or I'm insisting on the guns being removed from people on probation for domestic violence, regardless of their job title. So I won't play politics on the public safety. So that's why my supervisor was coming to me. And we have the issue where I've now watched how the system worked, and everybody who is a presiding judge or assistant presiding judge, they don't get paid extra. They don't get paid overtime. They don't get extra vacation time. So why are they doing it? They are doing it because they would like to put this on their resume. They're not done climbing the judicial ladder. Apparently, you keep your mouth shut when you find judges doing illegal things. That's one way. That's one way. But in theory, you become on the executive committee. You show that even among judges, you're a leader among judges. Okay. So in order to go to that next level, you have to have the support of your judicial colleagues. So you can't rock the boat now, can you?
Now, what is the next level?
So for state court judges, you have trial level, and then you have appellate court level, and then you have Supreme Court level. So there's 3 levels there. If you have a subordinate judicial officer, like we just discussed, you do have to sign a paper agreeing to consent to them being the judge on your case. However, what people don't say, what the form should say is, be careful who they replace this judge with, because that piece of paper saying, I don't want this commissioner, I don't want this referee to hear my case, means now it has to go to a judge. And we talked about egos, we talked about big heads, and then there's the fraternity, right? There's this loyalty, like a thin blue line. There's a thin black line for judges. Okay, you're not supposed to cross it. That's what I did. I crossed that black line of judicial robes when I became a whistleblower. Okay.
Interesting.
So just like cops don't like cops who report bad doing, judges don't like judges who report wrongdoing. I didn't tell any other attorneys or judicial officers. I consulted with an attorney. She worked for me pro bono, and she was a public interest lawyer. She had experience in family court, and she knew from her experience how bad actors can have disastrous results for families. So domestic violence is a problem in families, and if you don't have judges taking it seriously, is it any wonder we have so many problems in our society with violence and substance abuse and people having fractured egos due to the dynamics of their family. So as a public service, she took this case on pro bono. It was the first ever of a sitting judge.
Oh, wow.
This was back in the day when people actually used ringtones. Again, I date myself, but I pretty much put a ringtone on my phone when you called. It said, take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. And I was going through a perfect storm in my personal life too. So that played a role. I can't pretend it didn't play a role. But at the time, due to my second marriage, I had grown estranged from my parents. So I didn't have my dad and his wisdom. I didn't have my mom and her wisdom to lean on. I had grown estranged because I was dealing with domestic violence in my second marriage. So I had grown estranged. I didn't have that resource. Couldn't go to my supervisors because they're part of the problem. And basically, when they came for me because I was a whistleblower and they didn't want me to be able to know the secrets behind the robe anymore, I basically was appointed an attorney, and I told that attorney, look, I don't want this job anymore. I just want to keep my law license. I no longer believed that staying a judge would help serve justice anymore. So it was no longer for me. I was not willing to stay silent in the face of politics taking precedent over public safety. And they kept telling me, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I kept saying no. And they literally told me, my supervisors told me I was committing career suicide and what was wrong with me.
Awesome. 2 more questions. 2 pieces of advice. A piece of advice that you received that you would give back, that you give back to others, that you receive, that you say, okay, that was great, and I give that now back to others, both in life and in law.
Life and in law. You've heard me say them already, and I live by them to this day because I honor my weekends as a family law lawyer. Clients do try to impede on that. Balance. You cannot be a work machine and do it well for too long. You can keep it up for a little bit, but eventually you're going to be treating your coworkers wrong. You're going to treat your family wrong, and you can't have it all there. You have to have balance. You can't be too much fun. You can't be too much work. Balance. So my mom was right. Straight A's don't make a person. Living makes the person. So
definitely.
Yeah, work to live, don't live to work. And
all right. Go ahead. And then
one was like, get your trial experience. And if you are representing yourself and you're not able to get, you're not going to be a trial lawyer, but you're going to represent yourself, watch that judge a couple of times before, and watch them on the same day of the week that you're going to have your hearing, because you never know if, this judge could be perfect on Tuesdays, but maybe Tuesday nights is the day that, his ex-wife gets the kids and they always fight on Tuesday nights. So
very interesting.
Now like grumpy. So you got to watch the judge ahead of time and watch them on the same day and time that your hearing is going to be, because that's the personality you're going to get. That's the mood you're going to get.
That is very, very interesting. Is there, and this is a social media question, is there any perks from being a judge that you miss?
The retirement plan, and before COVID, I missed the parking. But other than that, no. I sleep like a baby. My integrity is intact. I feel very proud of my record. I have people that I've helped get sober when I was a drug court judge that we are still in touch with, and they credit me with helping them get back with their families. So I'm very proud of my record, even if it was misunderstood at the time.
And lastly, what is it that you know for sure? If you were going to leave something with the audience about life and career and going forward and judicial system in general, what is it that you know, Judge, for sure?
I tell people, and I train it because I'm a divorce coach too, and a relationship coach, learn how to turn bad into badass. All right.
Mm.
Turn bad into badass. Like I said, you want to come at me? Great. I'm going to use your force. All right. So turn bad into badass. Own it, and own your role in whatever decision you didn't make wisely. Because once you own your role, you can change that role in the next play.
Right. Definitely. Where can we find you, and where can, if someone wants to work with you, wants to get a hold of you, how can folks find you? And I'm going to put the website up under the bottom here too, but tell us how people can find you.
Yes, the easiest way to find me is office at dsalcido.com. And
okay. Office at D. Now, the HLS-SD.com, is that a website to find you on as well?
I'm sorry, the HLS, that's my law firm website. So I have I have Salcido Enterprises. I run multiple businesses. So yes, I have my coaching business. I have my law firm business. I have my public advocacy and public speaking line. So this is a one-stop shop, and I actually said it wrong. So sorry, but it's actually admin admin at DSalcido, SALCIDO.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I just bless you and continue blessings on everything that you do. And I look forward to synergizing with you so much in the future. So thank you. If we had claps, which you're going to add in later, I would definitely be doing that right now. And everybody, we are so back and we are so live here with you. And you just heard it. We just wrapped it up with the judge giving you some wisdom, some nuggets, and also sharing her experience on how life has happened and how she actually dealt with life happening to her. And guys, as I always say, get this information and run with it. Get this information and grow with it, because where your mind and your heart goes, your body will follow. You want to get this knowledge because knowledge, not only knowledge is powerful, but knowledge applied. Okay. Knowledge applied is super, super powerful. And until next time, we are so here. And this is Inside Law. I love each and every single one of you. I'm your host, Brookshire, and I look forward to seeing you back on our next show. Be well.